All right. We're back, and we're now going to go through 6 more new attacks. We're going to start off by talking about a man-in-the-middle attack, not a Malcolm in the middle, but a man-in-the-middle attack, and how this affects networks. And then we're going to move and look at DNS, TCP handshakes, keystroke loggers, social engineering, and sniffers. So when we look at these different types of attacks, let's use this illustration, talk about a man-in-the-middle attack. Here we've got Jack, we've got Peter, and we've got Jill. Jack and Jill are trying to share some money, and Peter is going to be the man in the middle, or that oil in the, or that fly in the ointment. So Jack's going to say, hey, send over your key. Peter's just going to echo that message. He's not going to change it at all. He can see it, but he's not going to change it. Jill's going to send the key back, but Peter's going to intercept it, change it to his own key. So instead of Jack receiving Jill's key, Jack's going to receive Peter's key. Jack then's going to send his account information through, and again, Peter is going to change it and instead send Jill his account information. That goes to Jill. Jill sends the money then to the wrong attack, and that man-in-the-middle attack is now complete. Pretty difficult to prevent these things. The real fear here, and it occurs almost on a daily basis, if you look, is there are certain nation states that really have complete control over their entire national network. And if you travel to those nation states, they can change the information you're sending, or which would be an attack on integrity, or they can read everything that you're sending. And so for certain nation states, the higher education institutions I've worked at, when we send an employee to those nation states, or a faculty member, we're going to give them a brand new cell phone. We're going to give them a brand new laptop. We're going to give them a brand new email account. We're going to give them a new storage account. And all of those accounts are only good while they're traveling in that country, because we know they're going to be compromised while they're there. And so that's a man-in-the-middle attack. If you think about it, it is a transmission-based attack. It is an attack on confidentiality or integrity. I guess it could be against availability, but you normally don't see that. And the way that you protect against that is some policy and some education. There are some technology tools, as the previous slide talked about, that you can use. I'll go back for a second. This idea of using VPN software will protect you, or using secure sockets with HTTPS can protect you. But again, you want to be cognizant of that man in the middle. It does occur, and it occurs on a nationwide basis in several countries around the world. All right, we're going to move on and look at DNS. DNS stands for Domain Name Service attacks. They happen a good bit as well, a little more difficult to happen. And so let me explain how it works. When you and I are using the World Wide Web, we're typing in a URL. We're typing in that howtogeek.com. It's something that's quasi-English-like. But computers are not English-like. And what they do is they take that and translate that into a IP or Internet Protocol address. That 208.43.115.82 is going to be a IP address. And there's not one server in the entire world that's doing that mapping between a URL and an IP. Instead, there are literally thousands of DNS servers, and they're working together, and they store tables of these kind of mappings, and those are called caches. And those caches can be poisoned so that instead of it going to the correct IP address, it could go to a malicious or fake IP address, and then you can just build whatever web services you want on that site and pretend to be that person. So in the example on the left, you see a redirection of Lenovo and Google's main search engine being moved to a webcam image of a bored young man sitting in a bedroom with a song playing in the background. That's probably not what Lenovo wanted. And so this poisoning occurs because you have people that are not authorized to make those changes going in and changing that cache information. And then that poisoning spreading throughout the world as these servers try to work together. There are mechanisms to protect against this. The principal one is to associate a public key with those mappings, and then that would allow only authorized folks to do that, not fully implemented yet, and thus you continue to see in the news almost on an annual basis a successful DNS attack where a real site is mapped to a fake site. Okay, we're going to move forward now and talk a little bit about, so DNS attack is one of these attacks. It's based on changing things in storage. It's an attack against availability for sure. You're taking down a site and remapping it somewhere else. And the principal approach to address it is actually technology. Okay, we're going to move forward now and talk about TCP/IP handshakes. And so when you think about transport control protocol, internet protocol, it's a dominant protocol for moving packets around the world, but it conducts a three-way handshake to establish a connection. And in earlier days, the implementations of this protocol did not, you could hang the entire process by not completing that last part of the handshake. You do the first two parts, you don't do the third part. And if you did that thousands upon times, all these would stack up, and eventually the memory would run out in the local server, and you could compromise the server through this mechanism. So again, this was poorly written software that did not check for these kind of conditions and allowed an exhaustion of storage. And so as we go forward, and again we go back and map this, it's an attack against storage. It's an exhaustion of that storage phase. It leads to an attack against confidentiality, integrity, or availability. You actually can lose the entire machine because a carefully crafted attack will allow you to do that buffer overflow and then take control of the machine. When you think about it, it's one of those things that you've just got to rewrite those protocols. I would, given that these are fairly sophisticated protocols that users don't write, they just implement it, I'd put it in the technology component, and most of those types of attacks are well protected against today. All right, we're going to move forward and then look at keystroke loggers. I've got two examples here, one of which is where you go in and you install some hardware, another of which is where you can have that software actually on a portable device, and as soon as that device is plugged in, then it's going to start doing that the keystroke logging. It is a key component. If you're a cyber criminal, you want to capture all the keystrokes that your users make. The only mechanism that I'm aware of, and I was actually forced to use these in the Army for a little bit of time, is this idea of a virtualized, randomized keyboard. So you couldn't type using your keyboard, you have to use your mouse and click a virtual keyboard that was on your screen, and that virtual keyboard was randomized. And in this particular case, when I was in the Army and I had to do this, I was just trying to access my pay slip, see how much the Army had paid me. The password was 13 to 15 characters long, and I've got this randomized keyboard, so it really became a hunt and peck effort to find the right keys and click them to get in, and all I'm trying to do is see that I got paid. I wasn't trying to change it, I just wanted to see how much I got paid. It didn't last too long in the Army. I'm sure they got a lot of complaints against this. You can detect, because they've got to send that data back and out, you can detect it during the transmission phase. It's typically an attack that occurs during the processing phase as people are typing on their keyboard. It's definitely an attack against confidentiality. It could lead to, if you type in your bank account, username and password, could lead to an attack against integrity. It's really an attack against confidentiality. And it's one of those things that there are some policy ways of addressing it, but technology's got pretty good at detecting keystroke loggers, reporting them as malware, and trying to shut those down. So again, technology is a good answer when looking at this. While look at that, in very short order, we've gone through 4 attacks. We're now moving on to the big one, the number one, the attack that everybody likes to use, social engineering. So social engineering is where you're coming in and you're trying to convince the employees that you're not someone who you are, and trick them to do things. And so again, lots of different opportunities out there. I've got a couple of images, one showing the original social engineering attack, and that was the Trojan horse. Yeah, we're leaving. We're getting on our ships. You won. We're going to give you this nice little gift. Don't worry that we got a couple of people inside and they're going to open the gates and we're going to come in and I'll kill you. But that was a social engineering attack. It was also a Trojan horse. It was a gift pretending to be, or an attack pretending to be a gift. So social engineering really takes lots of different forms. You can go and pretend to be an employee and say, here, I work in central IT, need your username and password, you got a problem with your account. They just got your username and password. They can do that in person, they can do it over the telephone. Dumpster diving, where you go into the dumpster, is a form of this type of attack where you're trying to capture information. Phishing attacks are a form of social engineering. So there are lots and lots of different attacks that are out there. The example that I've got in here is this idea of 2 different phishing messages, and we had talked about phishing during the last video, but once those went out, if you can trick somebody to open the message, then you get a back door, and then once you're in, you can start attacking that machine. If you can do that, then you can get into other components of the particular system. So social engineering, I'm spending a little bit more time on this because it really is the number one. When you look at all the other things, social engineering is the dominant form of attacks out there. And we'll talk in another video about buffer overflows, another very dominant form of an attack. All right, so we've talked about social engineering. Social engineering is typically addressed by education. It's typically an attack against the confidentiality of information, but it could lead to integrity after you gain control of the machine. And then finally, it's typically a processing attack. The human, have to take some activity normally for the compromise to occur. Not always, but typically. Finally, we're going to move on to sniffers. Sniffers are really helpful tools. I like to tell all the faculty at my university, in central IT, we can see all of your email, we can see all of your web traffic, we can see every click you make if it's going across a network. And sniffers are those kind of tools that allow us to reassemble what traffic is going on and to be able to read those messages. And so it's, again, one of those things you should be aware of. And when you go into an airport, you go to a Starbucks, you go to any of these sites that have an open network, you can pretty much guarantee that somebody has either got the software or has got a laptop set up where they're sitting there looking at all the traffic that's going across, and they're looking for username and passwords that are unencrypted. So as you can see in the graph on the left, when you see that HTTP, it's missing an S, and if it's asking, so it's not a secure circuit, and if it's asking for your password, that means it's going across unencrypted. Somebody can see it, somebody can copy it, and that would be really, really bad. So sniffers do exist out there. They're a very good tool if you're trying to troubleshoot networks and figure out what's going on, but they can also be used maliciously, and that's why you want to make sure that when you're connecting, that you're protecting your traffic. VPN, virtual private network, is a mechanism for doing so because it creates that secure tunnel going through. Making sure your data is encrypted as it's going is going to protect you as well. All right, so very good. Look at that. We've come to the end of this particular video. We've talked about a man-in-the-middle attack, DNS attack. We've talked about TCP/IP handshake, keystroke loggers, software engineering, and sniffer. Guess what? 2 out of 3 are down. Next video is going to dig into worms, Trojan horses, crackers, hackers, backdoors, and a buffer overflow attack. All right, so keep on studying, keep on learning. I look forward to seeing you in the next class.